Okay. Thank you, baby. Um, yeah, thank you for the nice introduction. I think there's a few people here that weren't here yesterday, so hello, welcome. Um, are we going to do the prayers again today? All right. So, uh, okay, so as we did yesterday, and as normally is done in the tradition, we say some prayers as a preliminary to help get ourselves in the right mindset for receiving the teaching. And as I mentioned yesterday, try not just to recite the words. I think you do a lot of it in Tibetan, which is good. Um, but we'll see in the prayer book there's the Tibetan and the English translation alternating lines. So try just to look at what the lines are saying and try to meditate on the meaning as much as you can. Okay? With that, I'll turn it over to our fully qualified chant master.
Page 34 of the Golden Paragon. The diffusion generating bodhicitta. Sange Jodan Soki Jonam La Janshu Barbu Dagni Capsuchi Dagi Jin Sogi Pe Sonangi Dona Penche Sangi Dupasho Sange Jodan Soki Jonam La Janshu Barbu Dagni Capsuchi Dagi Jin Sogi Pe Sonangi Dona Penche Sangi Dupasho Sangi Chodan Soki Cholam La Janshu Bardu Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi Jinsogi Pe Sonangi Jola Penche Sangi Tu Passion. I go for refuge and I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and Supreme Assembly. By the practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness in the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be acceptable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment to friends and hatred for enemies. May all sentient beings have happiness in the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment to friends and hatred for enemies. Reverently I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my nectar actions accumulated since beginning this time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of karma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. Short mandala, friend. Nidegen pa Sangye Shindu Mite This ground, anointed with perfumes, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha flute and occupant. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Bandhana Kami. Continuing on page 73. Page 73, praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings. To you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings. To you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings. To you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, O supreme amongst humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who were wise then, I prostrate. The pure bodies form supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the three worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. To the supreme science, space like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the three worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to the Dharma that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all three ever devout homage, to all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms atoms in all respects, with supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions, subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a gleam, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the flow of falls, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, whether by the beasts of aging, sickness, and death. The heart of the perfection of wisdom sutra. I prostrate to the Arya triple gem. Thus did I hear at one time the Bhagavan was dwelling on massive virtuous mountain in Rajagriha together with a great community of monks and a great community of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also, at that time, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those 5 attributes also as empty of inherent nature. Then, to the power of Buddha, the venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avadotishwaran said this to the venerable Sharathatiputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five acts also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness without characteristic, unproduced, unseen, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on up to and including no aging and death and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, suspicion, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the endpoint of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly, completely awakened to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tayada Om Gade Gade Paragade Parasamagade Bodhisvaha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagwan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as they have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having spoken, the venerable Sharatvatipatra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and the Dharmas were overjoyed and highly praised as spoken by the Page 81, prayer to the lion feast at Hindu. We prostrate to the gathering of the genies in the three chakras who abide in the holy yoga of using space. By your powers of clairvoyance and magical emanation, look after practitioners like a mother of her child. Akasamara Sadara Samaraya. By the teachings of the three supreme jewels possessing the power of truth, may inner and outer hindrances be transformed, may they be dispelled, may they be pacified. Chintan Puru Swata. May all negative forces opposed to Dharma be completely pacified. May the host of 80,000 obstacles be pacified. May they be separated from problems and harmful conditions to Dharma. May all enjoyments be in accord with the Dharma, and may there be auspiciousness and perfect happiness there right now.
Okay. Thank you for that. Hi, Van. Okay, so maybe it's just worth Have you, all these preliminary prayers, have you received like a commentary on all those words? No, my field. So why don't, could you just open up to the beginning of those prayers? What was it, 34? And so this first stanza, I just wanted to talk about a little bit. You'll see there's so many places, and it's a very important stanza because within these just 4 lines, it contains pretty much the entire Dharma. So it says taking refuge and generating bodhicitta. So it is commonly said that the practice of taking refuge is the practice by which one becomes a Buddhist, right? So it's not that you're born into a certain family, anything like this, but even if your parents are Buddhist, even if you're Tibetan or Sri Lankan or Thai, whether or not you have refuge in your continuum is whether you're considered a Buddhist. And so even this word refuge is, I think, very telling, right? So now in the monsoon, yeah, when it starts to rain and you don't want to get wet, a common way we talk about refuge is, like refuge, shelter from a storm, right? So if you're out in the street and it starts raining and you don't want to get wet, you're going to look for a place that can give you some protection from the undesirable condition of getting wet, right? Yeah. So similarly, this will also be a kind of review of yesterday, but we started yesterday, those of you who aren't here, talking about how all beings don't want to suffer, and all beings want to have happiness. Okay, so when we say taking refuge, why are we taking refuge? It's because we don't want to suffer. Okay, so just like when we are out in the rain, we don't want to get wet. We have to look for something that will give us the protection from the rain, right? And so we'll look for a solid roof, no holes in it, and this kind of thing, right? So similarly, although there are many kinds of refuges out there, right? When we look for a refuge from all of suffering, yeah, then as we again review from yesterday, we talked about the Lam Ring and the 3 kinds of practitioner, right? 3 kinds of Dharma practitioner who are differentiated by their goal for practice, okay? And there's also a way of explaining the refuge of these 3 different practitioners, right? The initial practitioner, what is the suffering they're trying to be free of? Yes, thank you. The suffering of the lower realms, right? They don't want to be reborn in the lower realm in the next life, okay? And so they go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha with the goal to get protection from being reborn in lower realms. Now, why are the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha an adequate refuge for that? Because the Buddha teaches, as we saw in the Dhammapada, do not commit a single negative action, accumulate a host of perfect pure actions, okay? So that makes the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha a valid source of refuge for someone seeking protection from lower realms. Okay, good. Then, as we said yesterday, also, is that enough? No. No. Just getting a good rebirth in our next life is not good enough because what about the one after that? And even in a good rebirth, like a human, we still experience many kinds of suffering. So then, the middle capacity practitioner seeks a refuge from all of samsaric suffering. Yeah. Okay. And so then they then inquire as to the cause of suffering. And as we saw in the Four Noble Truths, the origin of suffering, the second noble truth, is our karma and our afflictive emotions, or klesha. Okay. And the antidote to the cause of suffering is this wisdom counteracting the ignorance, the distorted view of reality. Okay. So this is important to note. This is actually the unique teaching of Buddha. Yeah. That things lack inherent existence, right? In other traditions, they talk about the Atman. The Buddhist view is anatman, no self, right? The Buddhist view is shunyata. Okay. So in general, there's this saying from Chandrakirti, a great Indian master, who composed many commentaries on this topic of shunyata. He says in a text with 70 stanzas on refuge, he says the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha is the source of refuge for those desiring liberation. Okay, that's very key, because you see, the first practitioner just getting rebirth from a lower realm, right? You don't need to engage in teachings on shunyata, emptiness, anything like this, right? All you need to do is refrain from negative actions. And we do see, even in other, very wonderful religious traditions, teachings on abstaining from non-virtue, helping, fellow humankind, and so forth, right? Yeah. So it could definitely be the case that, based on, other traditions, or even some people, total atheists, yeah, but yet have some, compassion, are doing good things in the world, not harming others like this, right? But in order to achieve liberation from samsara, there's only one way to do that, by uprooting ignorance. And the only way to do that is having the correct understanding of emptiness. And the only, one who does that is the Buddha. Yeah, Buddhas, you can say. Yes. So that's why Chandrakirti says the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha is the refuge for those seeking liberation. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Then the great scope practitioner, the Mahayana practitioner, doesn't just want liberation for themselves, but they're conjoining that with great compassion, taking the responsibility to free all beings from their suffering. Okay. So here, I go for refuge. That's what refuge means. Yeah. And then is it just going to be, I have some problem now, right? I have a court case against me. I don't want to lose. I'll take refuge in the Buddha. And then when I win the court case, all right, I'll go back to my old ways. No. Until I'm enlightened. That means not even just this life, but countless lifetimes. Because although we were mentioning yesterday how it is technically possible we can be enlightened in this life, it's possible. But looking at how we're spending our time, it's probably not going to happen. I'm sorry to burst your bubble. Okay. We can still change. But yeah. So until we're enlightened, we're going to take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly. So Buddha, as we know, is the teacher. The Dharma, we normally say, is teachings. Yeah. But actually, the real Dharma is of the Four Noble Truths, the last two: the cessation of suffering and the path leading to the cessation of suffering. Right? The books, okay, we say, oh, it's a Dharma book, because it explains the methods by which we develop true paths and true cessation in our minds, right? Yeah. And then Supreme Assembly is another word of saying Sangha, the community of spiritual practitioners. Okay. And although, fully ordained monks and in general, the ordained Sangha is held as a representative, right? The real Sangha are the people who have the realization, direct realization of ultimate reality. and they don't have to be wearing robes. Okay? All right. So that's what that means. And just as when we take refuge, like from a storm or monsoon rains, we don't just, stand in the middle of the street, look at a nice building and say, "Oh, building, may you protect me," right? No, that don't work. We have to go inside, right? So similarly, although it's great to say, save me, Buddha, what we saw last night, um, the Buddha has said that we need to become our own refuge. The Buddha shows us the path, but it's up to us to then put it into practice, you know? And then there's another kind of medical analogy that, once we have received this precious medicine, if we don't then take it, it's not the fault of the doctor, it's not the fault of the medicine, but the fault is of the patient. Yeah, right. So similarly, although we might, read all these texts, be able to quote them by heart, right, and chant very beautifully in Tibetan, yeah, that alone, if we don't change our behavior, if we don't change our minds, if we don't put into practice the Dharma teachings, it's not going to offer much benefit. Okay, so that's the first two lines about refuge. Okay, so having then gone for refuge, it really is committing ourselves to act in a different way, right? We were talking last night about why is it so difficult? It's because we're habituated to our old ways of thinking, our old ways of behaving, right? Our old ways of thinking and behaving is thinking just about ourselves, right? And therefore, putting others down and committing kind of, negative actions in order for self-gratification. Hmm? Or at the very least, just thinking about this life. Hmm? Okay. So then the next two lines, okay, so sorry. The first two lines then, it says, prevents us from falling into a wrong path. Okay? Then the next two lines is the generating of bodhicitta. That prevents us from going into a lesser path. Okay? So of the three practitioners, right, without these next two lines, by my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. That is what the mind of bodhicitta is. Bodhi being enlightenment, chitta is mind, right? So it's this mind that aspires to become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings, right? And here it's also important to know it's not just the last line, may I become a Buddha, may I become a Buddha, but the third line, by my practice of giving and the other perfections. Those of you who know, there's 6 perfections. These are the main practices that a bodhisattva undertakes, right? So as we know, in general, in order to do anything, we need a motivation to do it, right? Yeah. But one of the analogies Shantideva gives is there's a difference between wishing to go and actually going, right? So we might wish to go to, I don't know, wherever, the Maldives, right? Right? But if we just say, oh, I wish I could be in Maldives, but just never leave our house, then we'll never get there. Yes? So similarly, although having the wish to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings is great, we also then have to accompany it with the actions, means training these perfections, right? There's 6: giving, ethical discipline, patience, enthusiastic perseverance, meditation, and wisdom. Okay? So this perfection, right? Paramita. And we're now, if I ever get to it, the Prajnaparamita Sutra, this Vajra Sutra, right, is talking about the perfection of wisdom. But in it, as we will see, the Buddha also spends a lot of time talking about the first perfection, right? The perfection of giving, Dharma. Okay? So I will say this. Dagi Jinso Gipe Sonamgi. Okay, all right. So Sonam is merit. Yeah. Now here, it's not quite literally translated, saying by my practice of giving and other perfections. Okay. But His Holiness Dalai Lama, he now changes. He emphasizes that we should change the words, right? So it would be Dati Jinso Gipe Sok Nam Gi. Sok is collection. And there are two collections. There's a collection of merit and a collection of wisdom. Okay. And so typically, how it's most commonly explained, of the six perfections, okay, the first three are on the merit side. The last two are on the wisdom side. And then the fourth, the perfection of enthusiastic perseverance, that is determined by what you're enthusiastically persevering about. You know, if you're enthusiastically persevering about giving, then that practice goes into the merit. If you're enthusiastic persevering about wisdom or meditation, it goes into the perfection of the collection of wisdom. You see? So normally, His Holiness talks about why we need to do that is so that we remember explicitly that in order to achieve enlightenment, we need both the collections, wisdom and merit, right? So anyway, try to think about that as you recite this verse. And then the other advice that His Holiness often gives is even this, in the Tibetan, dagi. So da is the self, yeah. Dagi would be mine or my, right? Yeah. Then, so you see in the earlier one, Janchu Bardu Dani Chapsuchi, that's I. Dak is I. And then Dagi Jinso Gibisonagi, by my practice. So His Holiness often says we should then kind of, as to the best of our ability, then meditate. Who is this I? Who is this I that's now engaging in the teaching? Who is this I that is practicing giving and the perfections, right? And then try to recall the view of shunyata, right? So we'll get to that shortly. Okay. So anyway, what this then means is, and you should also know this. Typically, prior to a teaching, they'll also change this verse a little bit. It'll say, "Dagi chenyen." Ch is Dharma, right? Sange, ch dan sogi chonam la, right? That's the first line. So ch is Dharma, okay? And ch nyen, yen means to listen. So you'll often see it like this: by my the collections from listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Okay. So anyway, we can also just use that as our motivation, right? Right. So usually, as we were saying last night, it's not just enough that the teaching is a Mahayana teaching, but the motivation has to be a Mahayana one. What makes it a Mahayana motivation? To think that we're engaging and listening to this teaching so we can become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings, right? Then you have that. Wow. Then you don't even understand a single word that I'm saying, right? It's okay. Doesn't matter. You've done the most important thing. Okay. All right. So that's very important. So I wanted to spend a bit of time on that. And also it served as a bit of a view, some of the things we covered yesterday. Okay? So then what we're also saying, I already mentioned about this ignorance, right? And so the antidote to the ignorance then is the correct apprehension or the correct realization of reality. Okay. But the ultimate reality is so difficult to understand, right? That then we're talking about how the Buddha then skillfully and gradually led beings to deeper and more profound philosophical viewpoints. Okay. So so I shared the couple quotations, right? The one from Nagarjuna's Ratnavali about the grammarian first teaches the students the model of the alphabet and so forth. Okay, so why to do this? Okay, and this is just also to preface more disclaimers before we get into the actual sutra. Okay, because you see, Nagarjuna also says, right, ruined are those of little intelligence who take emptiness in the wrong way, like a snake wrongly grasped or a spell incorrectly performed, right? So those of you who've seen the Harry Potter movies, right? When they're doing the spells and they're just learning, sometimes they turn their friend into a frog or something, right? It can be very dangerous. Yeah. Okay. Therefore, knowing that this Dharma means shunyata, it is difficult for the depths of beings to understand. The sage's mind turned away from teaching the Dharma. So we also mentioned a little bit about the Buddha's life story yesterday. And famously, after he was enlightened in Bodh Gaya, right, present-day Bihar, he remained silent for 7 weeks. And he uttered this one phrase that those of you who learn with Geshe Dorje Damdul, who's also very fond of quoting this one, right? Profound, peaceful, free of elaboration, clear light uncompounded, I have found a nectar-like Dharma. But if I taught it, no one would understand. Therefore, I will remain silent in the forest. Yes? Okay. His Holiness is also very fond of reciting this. Anyway, the point is, in the Sarah J, the monastic university in Balakupi, where I studied, there is a little bit of debate about it, but our textbook ends up saying, it's not that the Buddha wasn't going to teach. It was always his intention to teach. But by pausing for the 7 weeks, it then just gives us pause, right? So that we don't come into it thinking it's going to be easy. And, after one session, oh yeah, I know about emptiness. I took a course on Vajra Sutra, like this, right? Okay. Even His Holiness Dharma had said that it was only after 35 years, right? And his years means living in the monastery with the access to the best tutors, masters, so forth, and spending a lot of time debating, meditating, all this, right? Okay, not 35 of our years where we might do like an hour of practice a day if we're lucky. Yeah. So 30 this Holiness's years. Then he said after that, he finally got some insight into okay, there's 4 tenet systems within Buddhism. The highest one, Madhyamika, that has 2 branches. So he said the lower of the 2, he got that understanding after 35 years. You understand? Okay? So, now, what then is the danger, right? Like we see in Heart Sutra, right? There's no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no concept, no, 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 right? So if we just take that to mean nothing exists, nihilism, right? That would be a big mistake. And that is the critical mistake that the Buddha was trying to prevent, right? Because why? If we then hold there's no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, right? Nothing exists. That means you don't exist. I don't exist. Liberation doesn't exist. The person who is to achieve liberation doesn't exist. Non-virtue doesn't exist. Virtue doesn't exist. Suffering doesn't exist. So then suffering doesn't exist. Why do anything to liberate yourself from suffering? Suffering doesn't exist. Why would I abandon the causes of suffering? Right? There becomes no sort of underpinning and motivation to practice. Yeah. So we're going to get into this in a minute. But point is, there's a story of a great bodhisattva who was the tutor to a king. I'm not sure if it was this eon or previous eon. Anyway, this bodhisattva was tutoring, teaching the king about emptiness or about Dharma. And then he started with emptiness. And then the king fell into the wrong view of nihilism and thought nothing existed. And then, well, this my teacher doesn't exist, so killed him. So big mistake, right? So then it's in the Bodhisattva vows to not teach emptiness to unripened disciples. Yeah. So I'm saying all this. It's an important disclaimer. Okay. Whatever we're going to talk about now in Vajra Sutra or Heart Sutra, no, 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 no. It doesn't mean non-existing, full stop. Okay? Okay? Do you exist? You want to be free from suffering? Yes. Okay? So don't lose sight of that. Okay? And that is why another verse from Nagarjuna, where he says that the Buddha taught the self, non-self, right? So self, no self, self and non-self, right? And it goes on to say that the medicine can only be prescribed relative to the patient. You understand? So when we say, what is the best medicine? Can we say that? No, right? What does the patient have, right? If they have a certain kind of illness, they need to be prescribed this. If they have certain allergies to some medicines, okay, don't give them that one, give them this one instead, right? And so as we said yesterday, the Buddha, through his omniscient wisdom, could then see the individual dispositions of all the disciples and then give out the teachings exactly what was going to be best for them. So for those students, if he taught, for example, this Prajnaparamita, the full view of emptiness, they would then fall into nihilism. Then they would have no motivation to practice virtue. And so for them, he taught them the self exists inherently. And this inherently existent self, that's going to take rebirth and it's going to experience inherently existent suffering. So because you don't want that, then practice abandoning inherently existing non-virtue, right? Right? Then later, go back and say, hey, you know what? When I told you the self inherently exists, hmm, sit down. I have news for you, right? And then gradually led the disciples to more. Okay. And that is why then we see, the center, Choe Khor Sum Ling, yeah? Che, what is that? Dharma, same word. Choe Khor, Khor is a wheel, chakra, right? Sum, three, Ling, the place of the three turnings of the wheel of Dharma, okay? Is one way of categorizing the different teachings that the Buddha gave. And in the first turning of the wheel, he just spoke of the Four Noble Truths. Yeah. But in that one, on certain occasions, he didn't teach the full, well, it depends who you talk to, but there are some presentations that say it didn't teach the full emptiness. Okay. Yeah. Second turning of the wheel, and that first turning of the wheel also was intended for people who are mostly interested in personal liberation, the middle school practitioner. The second turn of the wheel of Dharma is where the Prajnaparamita Sutras belong to. That teaches the non-inherent existence of all phenomena. Yeah. In a certain presentation, it says the first turning of the wheel just teaches the selflessness of a person, right? But doesn't go into selflessness of phenomena. Means things other than the person, books, tables, idlu. Okay. Then the second turn of the wheel taught the essencelessness, the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena. And then the third turning of the wheel was basically, and the second turning of the wheel was intended only for Bodhisattva disciples. The third turning of the wheel then taught from, as we saw in the Nagarjuna, some texts based on duality, some on non-duality. Okay, so that is pointing to what they call the mind-only school. I don't want to get into it too much, but it is a kind of, as I mentioned before, tenet systems. It's the third one, right? So it's not the highest, not the lowest, but it's one of the rungs on the ladder. Okay. Anyway, I think that's all we need to know right now. Just know that there were these different levels of teaching that the Buddha gave based on the dispositions and intelligent level. Oh, Kuncho. Kuncho literally means like the jewel, right? So we're talking about the three jewels of refuge. And now we have the okay. So while I was saying all that, right? There's different levels. Okay. This Vajra Sutra belongs to the highest philosophical viewpoint that the Buddha taught. So it's profound. The Buddha did not teach this one right away, nor did he teach it just to any disciple. Okay. So now we're going to be going into it. And that's why I had to give all these disclaimers so you guys don't fall into nihilism. Okay. So in general, in this Prajnaparamita literature, right, they normally talk about, what was it? 6 mothers and 17, I believe, children. Okay. So the 6 mothers, it's like the big texts on emptiness. There's the 100,000 stanza, Prajnaparamita Sutra, which is 12 volumes that we see over there, 12 volumes like this. Then we have the 25,000 stanza, 8,000 stanza, 18,000 stanza, 10,000 stanza. like this. Then the children, right, are the shorter texts. Okay. Now, the Heart Sutra, which we also said at the beginning, is included in that. This, which is sometimes known as the 300 stanza, right? The Vajra Sutra, Vajra Charika, yeah, that's of the children. Okay. But they all have the same subject matter. Okay. Why then were there these different presentations? Well, there's a bit of debate about that too. Okay. I mean, in general, we already talked about how different people had different dispositions, different intelligence levels, and so they needed more or less explanation. Okay. Now, there's another explanation by so some of you might know in Mungur, you know, Mungur is in northwest Karnataka, close to Gokarna. There's another Tibetan settlement, and there are two monastic universities there, Ganden and Drepung. Okay, so Drepung Loseling and Ganden Shartse, they use a textbook written by Pinchen Sonam Drakpa. And in that those monasteries, what they say is the Buddha on Vulture's Peak said one word, okay? One word. And then, depending on the merits of the people in the audience, those with the highest merits, the whole 100,000 Prajaparamita appeared to their minds. Yes, it's amazing. Then of medium merit, 25,000. And then the lesser merit, 8,000. It's like that, right? Now, it seems quite miraculous. It is something to be analyzed, but you should know from the Lamrim teachings, one of the qualities of the Buddhist speech, my more experienced students, what's one of the qualities of the Buddhist speech? It is said in another sutra, if there are 100 people who ask the Buddha the same question with one word, then everyone would hear a different answer, right? So that kind of thought is similar to this, what Panchen Sonamdrakpa is saying, how even one word then gets heard different. Okay? All right. So that's a bit about the prajna paramita, yeah? Wisdom, here says gone beyond, okay? So gone beyond, yeah? Paro in Tibetan, paro du chimpa, okay? So paro is like the other side, paro, yeah? Chimpa means gone, here they literally gone. So what does that mean? Gone, you'll sometimes see gone to the other shore, right? The other shore of samsara. Samsara is likened to an ocean. So in the ocean, we're drowning, right? No support or stability. But finally, when we get to shore, we then, are safe, right? So similarly, this paramita is what enables someone to go to the other shore. Yeah. Yeah. And in this case, the wisdom, as we mentioned, is the wisdom realizing emptiness. But what makes it the perfection of wisdom is that it has to be conjoined with bodhicitta. Okay? Without bodhicitta, then it doesn't have the ability to get you to the far shore of enlightenment. Okay? So that's why it's called the prajna paramita.
Isn't that what's for the biggest positive?
So, yes, thank you, Dee. In the Heart Sutra, then we see this mantra of the heart of the perfection of the mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared Tayata on Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhi. Okay. And there it's usually translated as like, is it go or gone? I've seen both. Go, gone, gone, gone beyond, gone completely beyond Bodhi. So Bodhi, enlightenment. And so those 5 words then kind of correspond to the 5 paths within the grounds of path literature. I don't want to go into that too much. But anyway, the point is gone completely beyond to Bodhi. Yeah. So that the path analogy, the going beyond kind of language shows up in different contexts. Okay. Anyway. So now Vajra cutter. Vajra cutter. Okay. So the Vajra then is known as something that is both indestructible, right? And also has the power to destroy anything. Sometimes you'll see this as the diamond cutter sutra, right? This is same, just different translation. It's referring to the same sutra, right? So just like the diamond is the thing that can cut any other stone, but itself cannot be cut. So this, wisdom realizing emptiness is the one that has the power to cut and cannot cut. It is indestructible. Okay. So, and this cutting is also, you see it a lot, cutting the root of samsara, right? Which means this ignorance, although we have it now and we've always had it, eventually we'll be able to, sever, means completely abandon it such that it will never arise again. You understand? So right now, you might receive a teaching on emptiness and you might say, if you have good merit, oh yes, I totally understand, that makes so much sense. I believe in that, right? But next week you might go to another lecture with someone, very charismatic and a smooth talker, and they might tell you all the reasons why you should believe in inherent existence. And then after hearing that lecture, you'll be like, oh no, I think this guy's right? So after a certain point in the path, you won't be kind of swayed by sort of deceptively cogent arguments and smooth talkers, right? And then eventually you'll abandon ignorance by its root. Okay? So with that, the title is done. So you should know this, actually. You should know this. In the Geshe Studies program, right? It's 19 years, maybe 25 years, depending on what you do. So we study the Abhisamaya Alamkara, which is a commentary on the hidden meaning of the Prajnaparamita Sutras. We study that text, which is about 38 pages or so. Yeah. Okay. We studied that for 7 years. Okay. And we studied the title for about 3 months. So you might think I'm being a bit verbose. Huh? 3 months. Maybe 2. I don't know. It's long. There's a lot of preliminaries. You gotta get, set the table, set the scene. Okay. So I've done that. I'm happy with that. Oh wow, this is really cool. Okay. So those of you, okay, yes, it's there in the Zoom. That's wonderful. So now, Vajra. Normally at the beginning of these sutras, you also see it will give the title in Sanskrit and also the title in Tibetan. Okay. So normally they give the title in Sanskrit so that it kind of distinguishes it as being from authentic Sanskrit sources and not just something made up by some Tibetan. Okay. It's very important that the teachings we have, and especially the commentaries that we rely on, should be from authentic commentarial traditions that have been passed down from the Buddha to present day. Now, I'm not sure, actually, maybe I shouldn't say this. Okay, I'll say what I'm sure about and also what I'm not sure about. Okay, I saw Osho. You know Osho? Yeah, very, very famous. I saw in a bookshop there is a commentary who at least had his picture on the cover, and it said the Heart Sutra. Yeah. So I'm not sure if he received authentic commentary by a master who had the lineage and all that, or just made it up. I'm not sure. Yeah. I do know this is way back in the day. Before I ordained even, I was on a kind of Buddhist internet forum, and there was someone in the forum who was then had fallen into nihilism and used the Heart Sutra as his backup. He said, look, it says in Heart Sutra, no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no factors and all this, right? So there's a risk if we don't have the authentic source and we just rely on the words. Oh yeah, I read the words on the page. It says no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. None of those things exist. Heart Sutra says so, and the story, right? And here we're going to have to supply a little bit extra interpretation on some of these things, right? So therefore, it does say there are these. There's a saying, a sangha talks about this, Arya Sangha, that we need to not rely on the person, but rely on the teaching. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. Some other time, we'll see very nice, smooth talker say all these beautiful things. Don't get enamored about that, right? About the person, but listen to the teaching. Okay. Then don't rely on the words, but rely on the meaning. Okay. And so there are many examples of this, right? Well, the famous example is once I think it was a king. I think it was a king who then, from some series of events, then led to his parents' death. Yeah, what happened? I'm not sure the exact thing, but anyway, huh? Yeah, yes. And then what was the story? I don't know what happened. Anyway, there's something that happened. This king then did something that caused the parents' death, and he was then very upset about it. But the Buddha, through his skillful means, then said to this king, oh, one ought to kill one's parents. Huh? No, you see, that's just the words. The king understood the parents to mean the causes of samsara, right? Just like our parents is the ones that cause us to be reborn in this body, overall in samsara, who are our parents? What leads us to be causes us to be reborn in samsara? But karma and delusion. So then the king understood from the words, the Buddha said, you ought to kill your parents means you ought to liberate yourself from the cause of samsara. Okay, you understand? Ah. So rely on the meaning, not the words. Okay. And then when we rely on the meaning, we have to rely on the definitive meaning and not the interpretable meaning. Okay. So sometimes there'll be some things where the words might suggest one thing, but we have to interpret it in another way. Okay. And then the last reliance is not to rely on a kind of conceptual mind, but rely on the exalted non-conceptual wisdom. Okay. That is only going to come later for us. Okay. First, we do have to rely on concept. Yeah. Later, when we meditate, we'll get to a non-conceptual realization. Anyway, so like that. So that's why in the language of India, Arya, so Arya sometimes means exalted, okay? And so sometimes you'll see, like in the Heart Sutra, Arya Avalokiteshvara, right? Bodhisattva Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara. So in that context, Arya means the one who has a direct realization of emptiness. You know what I'm saying? Don't rely on conceptual wisdom, but rely on non-conceptual. Yeah. One who has a non-conceptual realization of emptiness becomes an Arya. Okay. Now, in this context, Arya exalted, it's because the subject matter is exalted, because it's a teaching on emptiness. Okay. Vajra, Chedika, Vajra cutter, Nama, I think it's named. Yeah. Prajnaparamita Mahayana Sutra. Yeah. So then what makes a Mahayana Sutra, right? Maha, great, Yana, vehicle. What makes something a Mahayana Sutra is if the Sutra's disciples, intended disciples, are Mahayana practitioners, means bodhisattvas. Okay? All right. The Exalted Mahayana Sutra on the Wisdom Gone Beyond called the Vajra. Prostrate to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So, okay, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to go through all the words, but I'll start that way. And then as we start running out of time, I'll take some liberties, okay? But you should know that this one, I prostrate to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, this is actually added by the translator. Yeah. And so in the actual sutra, the first words are thus that I hear at one time. But when they translated from Sanskrit to Tibetan, they use this, I prostrate to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. That was a common line of homage added by a translator to a sutra belonging to the sutra class. Yeah. In other texts in Vinaya, it'll say, I prostrate to the all-knowing one, means the Buddha. And then sometimes you'll also see for texts on wisdom or Abhidharma, it'll see, I prostrate to the noble or the youthful Arya Manjushri. Yeah. Some of you might see that from the chanting names of Manjushri. Yes. Also, King of Paris. Yeah. Anyway, so in general, those three baskets, the three Pitaka, there's the Abhidharma Pitaka, the Sutra Pitaka, and the Vinaya Pitaka, yeah, which correspond to the knowledge, concentration, and discipline. Okay, so in general, those three homages were used for those three different baskets, but it's not always like 100% foolproof. Okay, just so you know that. All right. Thus did I hear at one time. All right. So this is what I wanted to mention here. Um, so this Heart Sutra that we recited at the beginning, there's actually many commentaries of the Heart Sutra found in the Tengyur. Tengyur, we mentioned, was 215 volumes of commentaries by Indian masters. I think there's something like 9, 11, something like this, commentaries on the Heart Sutra. There's only one commentary on the Vajra Sutra by the great master Kamala Shiva. Yeah. So here, Kamala Shiva talks about this, thus did I hear at one time, okay? But this one phrase is found in many sutras, yeah? The Heart Sutra also says, thus did I hear at one time, yeah? So there is deep significance in this, yeah? One is that by saying one time, yeah, it's showing how this is a very rare and precious occasion, right? Not that the Buddha gave this particular teaching many, many, many times, but it's a rare one-time thing. Yeah. Now, did I hear? Okay, so actually, first the I. Yeah, I. Now, in terms of the Heart Sutra, there's a lot of debate on who is the I, right? Who heard the sutra, right? So, in general, the Buddha's attendant, Ananda, you've heard of, right? So when Ananda was asked to become the Buddha's attendant, he had certain stipulations, right? Things he wanted in the contract before he agreed. And one of them is that he could accompany the Buddha wherever he went. So from the time that Ananda became the Buddha's attendant to the time that Buddha showed the aspect of passing on into parinirvana in Kushinagar, Ananda attended all the Buddha's lectures, right? He was always with them. What an amazing thing to have in a contract. Most of us, when we negotiate, we're like, I want vacation time. Another was like, I want no vacation time. I want to always be with Buddha. To show the difference, right? So then after the Buddha showed the aspect of passing away into parinirvana, there's this famous what do we call it? Gathering of the arhats, of the people who had attained liberation. There's 500 of them, and they're all going to come together and sort of systematize the Buddhist teachings. Now, it is said that at that time, Ananda wasn't an arhat, so only arhats would be allowed in. But he's the one who listened to all the sutras. So it is said that he then attained arhatship, he attained nirvana like the night before the conference was about to begin. Yeah. So most of the sutras, then it is, just renowned that it's Ananda who's the one saying, thus I heard at one time. And so in that conference, he would then say, he would be in front of all the other arhats, thus did I hear at one time, right? And in general, although we talk about the sutras being the Buddha's speech, there's three kinds of speech, right? There's the direct speech, the things that are spoken by Buddha, and then what they call the Chingilapika. The Chinlap means the blessing, right? So as we saw in the Heart Sutra, then through the power of the Buddha, the Shariputra asked to Avalokiteshvara, right? Okay. What that means is through the blessing of the Buddha, this question comes into Shariputra's mind, right? And the answer also, although Avalokiteshvara is speaking it, it also was inspired by Buddha. And that's why, although it came out of Shariputra's mouth, it is called like the speech of Buddha, through the Buddha's blessing. Right? And then we have what's called the Jesumawe Ka. Jesu is like after. So what the Buddha did, he gave Ananda instructions saying, all right, later when you kind of report what was said, you can give these details about where it was spoken, how many people were there, and sort of set the scene, right? Right? So at the beginning here, all of this is Jesumawe Ka, spoken by Ananda, setting the scene. Thus did I hear at one time. So then here also describes how, and this is why some debate comes up. The point is, whoever listened to it, right? So in the Sutra, Heart Sutra commentaries, it says no, Ananda would not have the mental acuity to understand these Prajnaparamita sutras. Therefore, there's some people who argue it was Vajrapani, it was Manjushri, it was one of these great bodhisattvas who heard it. Whatever the case, to say I heard at one time means to have the full, perfect understanding of the subject matter, probably you have to be a Buddha, or at least a very high bodhisattva. So it is saying that whoever compiled the sutra is just then saying, okay, I heard this. I'm not saying I realized it, right? I heard this at one time. Yeah. Then the Bhagavan was dwelling in Sarasvati, in the grove of Prince Jeta, in the garden of Ananta Dada, together with a great sangha of bhikshus of 1,250 bhikshus and a great many bodhisattva mahasattvas. Okay, Sadhana, I will finish this and then we'll have a break. Snacks. There's actually a very beautiful story about this place in Sarasvati. I've not been there. Has anyone been? No? No. It's in UP. I've not been. Maybe we need to plan a pilgrimage. Wow. Dipti is very good. That's very, 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 very good. That's very good. As soon as I just floated the idea, she's like, yes, 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 yes. No, and I'll tell you, that's very good because, we're talking about Ananda. Yeah. So Ananda actually, at that first council of all the arhats, he was criticized because before the Buddha showed aspect of passing away, he dropped some hints, right? So in the 7 prayer that we did at the beginning, please, turn the wheel of Dharma and do not pass away into Parinirvana, something like this, right? Why that request for the gurus not to pass away is because when Ananda was with the Buddha right before he passed away, the Buddha said something like, the Tathagata, that means the Buddha, has the power to remain for the end of the eon. Right? And Ananda just kind of let it go. It is said that Ananda right then should have said, yes, please remain till the end of the eon. Right? But if the Buddhas aren't requested to remain, okay, if they're not requested to teach, they don't teach. If they're not requested to remain, they don't remain. Okay? Anyway, what I'm saying is, Dipti, very good. It's very auspicious. It's very auspicious when you have these these opportunities, to make the request right away. And later, I heard some of you have the great fortune to meet His Holiness the Dalai Lama, right? So some of us, we get so dumbstruck, we can't say anything, right? It's just like the mind freezes. But if you can at least remember, please, Your Holiness, remain to the end of samsara. Please, Your Holiness, please guide us until, samsara is empty. Please, Your Holiness, be my direct guru in all future lifetimes, like this. Okay? Even if you can't say, think that. There's another saying that the Buddha understands even the grunts of a mute person. So something, this in your heart, you hold that, and that's enough. You understand? Okay. So there's a very beautiful story about this in Sarasvati. So, huh? Oh, sorry. Shavasti. Sorry. Sarasvati is the goddess of wisdom. Yeah. Shavasti. Sorry. Shavasti. So as you may know, the Buddha did these summer retreat, the rains retreat, right? Where they don't, go places. And so for those 3 months, they stay in one place. There's other rules. They don't walk on grass like this, because in the monsoon, all these bugs and small creatures, they come out. If you walk on the grass, you can't see them, you might kill them. So this time also, they use for retreat, the rains retreat, Dharma in Tibetan. And so they're trying to find a place, and then there's this grove of Prince Jeta, yeah? And it was ideal for retreat, very beautiful place. So then Buddha sort of said to this Dada, who was a great businessman. Sorry for the bad Sanskrit pronunciation. He was a great businessman and very rich. And Buddha sort of told him, hey, I really like this place. It's really good for retreat. And so he was so motivated to then purchase it for the Buddha, right? And then as the story goes, he then goes to this prince and says, hey, I want to buy this grove. And the prince is like, come on, it's not for sale. But he persisted. Oh, come on. And then to kind of get him away, right? He said, all right, if you cover the grove in gold coins, then I'll sell it to you for that much gold. Do you imagine? Right? So then, I'm not like, back up. Then he said, okay, deal. And emptied out his treasuries and was able to fill up. It's later said that he actually then became broke a couple of times, but then kind of got it back. He had some karma that he had to work through. But just this like willingness, not thinking twice, no negotiation, right? Okay. Then a great sangha of 1,250 bhikshus and a great many bodhisattva mahasattvas. So here in the commentary by Kamala Shila, it's interesting because as we said, right, Mahayana Sutra, okay, that means the intended disciples are the bodhisattva mahasattvas. Now the monks at that time, these bhikshus, were mostly trying to enter personal liberation, nirvana, right? They weren't the intended disciples of the sutra, but they always went around with the Buddha, right? Now, why they don't enumerate the great many bodhisattva mahasattvas is Kamala Shiva's commentary says these bodhisattvas, they're constantly working for sentient beings. So they wouldn't just spend all their time with the Buddha. They would then go help beings. And then when the Buddha was about to teach, they would come back. Right? So they're more kind of transient. They're on the go. Yeah. And you'll see in other sutras, like for example, the Sangata Sutra, another very precious sutra. And then the Buddha will tell certain bodhisattvas to go to the different Buddha world systems and inform all the bodhisattvas that I'm about to give this teaching at Vulture's Peak. And then those bodhisattvas, through miraculous powers, will come to Vulture's Peak. Okay? All right, let me do this. Let me do this. So then in the morning, see, we're going to talk because the Buddha goes on his alms round. So before we get the snacks, we can then talk about how the Buddha got his food, okay? Then we'll earn it. So then in the morning, having put on the lower and upper Dharma robes and carried the begging bowl, the Bhagavan entered the great city of Shravasti to request alms. Then having gone to the great city of Shravasti to request alms, the Bhagavan afterward enjoyed the alms food, and having performed the activity of food, since he had given up the alms of later food, put away the begging bowl and the upper robe. He washed his feet, sat upon the prepared cushion, and having assumed a cross-legged posture, straightened the body upright and placed mindfulness in front. Okay, so this also gets a lot of attention from Kamala Shiva in his commentary, right? So the point is here, inwardly, the Buddha, fully enlightened being, but outwardly took the appearance of being a monk. And this conduct right here is exactly in accordance with the Vinaya, the monastic discipline. Still, in some places today, like in Thailand, you'll see the monks doing this alms round. Have you seen? Right? They'll go very early in the morning, putting on the robes, then going out into the city, and then, although it says requesting alms, actually, you're not allowed to speak. You just walk through the city. Only if then a layperson, they have a little thing they say, stop, and then they'll approach you and then give. Yeah. So I had the good fortune to do this on a few occasions, and it's very, very nice, very humbling. Yeah. So it's exactly what this is showing: outwardly, form of a monk, inwardly, Buddha. But although one is a Buddha, still adheres to the kind of conventional monastic discipline. Now, here's another thing that's in the commentary. Even this, right, going to the city to receive alms is showing the Buddha's compassion. Huh? Yes. So Kamala Shiva explains this. The whole practice of giving alms and receiving alms, the Mahayana practitioner is thinking, I am going to allow these people to generate merits through offering to me. Right? It's amazing. So then, without having even uttered a word, right, the Buddha is leading these people to enlightenment. Yeah. Then it also says in the commentary, So washed his feet, sat upon the prepared cushion, and having assumed the cross-legged posture, straightened the body upright and placed mindfulness in front. So this also is there in some of the other Prajnaparamita commentaries, where the Buddha set up his own seat, showing even the respect that the Buddha has for the Dharma teaching. Especially this Prajnaparamita teaching is sometimes known as the mother of the Buddhas, because the Buddhas are born out of this wisdom, right? And so showing the reverence to the Dharma Otherwise, the Buddha himself prepares his own cushion, washing his own feet. His Holiness often, before he opens a text and reads from it, he'll have out the hand sanitizer and wash his hands as to not sully the pages, right? Then it also says in the commentary, place mindfulness in front. Tamala Shila explains this as being mindfulness is also remembrance. Yeah. So the Buddha then recalled his aspiration to lead all sentient beings to enlightenment through teaching the Dharma. But then doesn't just go teach. Later we'll see then the bhikshus come, and then Subhuti has to ask the question. Okay? So let us now receive our alms of the snacks that yes, Ravi? What's that? So in Kamala Shila's commentary, mindfulness means mindfulness of the Buddha's aspiration to benefit sentient beings through teaching the Dharma. Yeah. But see, before I read that in Kamala Shila's commentary, I just thought it meant, when the monks go on the alms round, they're not supposed to look here and there, but they only look like 2 meters in front of you and just see if they're going to step on some insect or something. So placing mindfulness in front, just not to be excited by the different things and you feel the vision, just placing mindfulness in front. So I thought it just meant that the Buddha, then just sat and kept his gaze low as to retain the senses. But that's why Kamala Shila is Kamala Shila. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Great. Okay. So my friends who are on the Zoom, we're going to take a short break. You can go get a snack if you want. And yeah, coffee, tea, whatever you want, some kind of refreshment. And we'll start up in a few minutes, okay? Yeah? Okay. All right. We have a lot of material to cover, so it's okay if you still have some beverages or snacks. You can eat them as we listen to the teaching, okay? So then many bhikshus approached the place where the Bhagavan was, and having reached there, bowing their heads to the Bhagavan's feet, circumambulated 3 times and sat to one side. Also at that time, the Venerable Subhuti, joining that very assembly, sat down. Then Venerable Subhuti rose from his seat, placed the upper robe over one shoulder, set his right knee on the ground, bowed, joined the palms together toward the Bhagavan, and said this to the Bhagavan. So here, Subhuti is one of the great disciples of the Buddha, and the disciple that was foremost in knowledge of the Paramita. So the fact that he rises from his seat, arranges the upper robe over one shoulder, and kneels is showing the posture of respect prior to giving requesting a teacher give teaching. So he says, Bhagavan, the extent to which the Tathagata Arhat, perfectly enlightened Buddha, has benefited the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas with highest benefit, the extent to which the Tathagata has entrusted the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas with highest entrustment, Bhagavan is astonishing, Subrata is astonishing. Bhagavan, how should one who has correctly entered the Bodhisattva's vehicle abide, how practice, how control the mind? So we previewed this question last night. So there's a few things to understand here. Yeah. So one who has correctly entered the Bodhisattva's vehicle means a Bodhisattva. Okay. What makes one a Bodhisattva is the presence in the mind of uncontrived bodhicitta, this altruistic wish to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Now, Subhuti, to common appearances, is not a Bodhisattva, nor is he a Buddha, right? Just like Shariputra, who we saw in the Heart Sutra, is not a Bodhisattva, but yet Shariputra is asking Avalokiteshvara, how should Bodhisattva train? Okay. Subhuti is now asking, how should a Bodhisattva practice, how control the mind? Okay. So I saw this in the commentary on the Heart Sutra, the significance of someone in the so-called lesser vehicle, Hinayana, why they're then asking is to show distinction, right? Both Subhuti and Shariputra, they're not training in the Bodhisattva path, but they still, in the context of these sutras, perhaps from the blessing of the Buddha, then are asking about it. Okay, but this really is just an opportunity to get the Buddha to explain more about the Mahayana practice. Okay. So then, in Kamalashila's commentary, with these 3 questions, how should they abide, how to practice, and how to control the mind, this is then likened to, you'll see this often, the 3, the ground, the path, and the result. The ground is like the starting point, okay? And so the starting point of the Bodhisattva practitioner is bodhicitta, okay? The practice is the practice of the 6 paramitas, and the result of Buddhahood, that is really how one gets total, only when one receives or achieves full enlightenment has one fully controlled the mind, right? That's the parasamgate, the going completely beyond. Okay? All right. And as we mentioned yesterday, it's very telling that although this is a Prajnaparamita Sutra, it's not just Subhuti asking, hey, how do phenomena exist? Hey, tell me about emptiness. It's about understanding the entire kind of beginning, middle, and end of the practice of a bodhisattva. right? In other words, see, it's not just then receiving the answer alone, all phenomena are empty of inherent existence. That in and of itself isn't going to do much. There's a whole series of practices that one needs to follow in order to achieve enlightenment. Okay? All right. So that was said, and the Bhagavan said this to the Venerable Subhuti. Subhuti, well said, well said. It is so, it is so. Okay. So here, the Buddha is affirming the question set forth by Subhuti as being something good. We see something similar at the end of the Heart Sutra. Well said, well said. Okay? So he's basically agreeing. So for sake of time, so, well said, Subhuti, it is so, it is so. The Tathagata has benefited Bodhisattva Mahasattvas with the highest benefit. The Tathagata has entrusted the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas with the highest entrustment. Subhuti, therefore, listen and properly retain it in mind, and I'll explain to you how one who has correctly entered the Bodhisattva vehicle abide, how practice, how control the mind. Having replied, so be it, the Venerable Subhuti listened in accordance with the Bhagavan, and the Bhagavan said this, Subhuti, here, one who has correctly entered the Bodhisattva's vehicle should generate the mind of enlightenment thinking this. As many as are included in the category of sentient being, born from egg, born from womb, born from heat and moisture, born miraculously, with form, without form, with discrimination, without discrimination, without discrimination, without subtle discrimination, the realm of sentient beings, as many as are designated by imputation as sentient beings, all those I shall cause to pass completely beyond sorrow into the realm of nirvana without remainder of the aggregates. Although limitless sentient beings have been caused to pass completely beyond sorrow, no sentient being whatsoever has been caused to completely pass beyond sorrow. Wow. Okay. So, a lot to unpack. So, at the beginning, category of sentient being, we have these different categories, right? So, there's the 4 types of birth. Born from egg means like a bird or a reptile. Born from the womb, a mammal. Now, born from heat and moisture, this refers to, although it's not strictly speaking true, the insects, like the worms that like are born in the trees, like between the bark, right? Those are said to be born from heat and moisture, right? And then born miraculously, these are the ones in the hell realms, right? They're said to, not be born from a womb, but just are instantly born in the midst of a flaming cauldron of fire, right? Molten copper and fire. Okay. What that means is all the sentient beings. Okay. And the significance is here for the Bodhisattva, one needs to have great compassion that extends to all beings in the 6 realms, whatever kind of way of birth, right? Without that, without one's compassion and bodhicitta extending to all beings, then it's not fully qualified bodhicitta. Okay? Then this with form, without form, with discrimination, without discrimination, but not without subtle discrimination. Okay. Those are other distinctions. Sometimes you'll see the 3 realms of existence. We have the form realm, desire realm, which is where we are, form realm and formless realm. Then within the form realm, there are some that through some kind of meditative concentration, they enter a kind of coma-like state where they don't have gross discrimination. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, point is there's all these different kinds of beings, and the Bodhisattva has compassion for all of them, right? Not just say the ones in the hell realms or the ones they know or the ones that this, okay? All sentient beings. Okay. So now, all those we'll come to this next sentence in a little bit. As many as are designated by imputation as sentient beings. That will come to later. But all those I shall cause to pass completely beyond sorrow into the realm of nirvana without remainder of the aggregates. Okay? So, nirvana, they categorize as two. There's nirvana with remainder and nirvana without remainder. And even this, but that means remainder and no remainder, varies by tenet system. Okay. So the abiding and non-abiding nirvana is something else. Okay. So one presentation, though that found in the Satrantika school, I'm sorry, you haven't gone into the schools. I'm just saying this for someone else. Okay. So this body, right, that I have has been projected by the karma and delusions of my last life. Okay, right? Then I've taken rebirth as this. Now, I'm going to do this, but for the sake of argument, if I achieve nirvana, personal liberation for myself alone, I still have this body, right? So you see in the Pali Canon, the different arhats still get sick, still have suffering because they have this body that is subject to being sick, right? So they still have the remainder of these aggregates. They call these the contaminated aggregates. Okay. When one achieves nirvana in the middle scope, yeah, personal liberation, one purifies the mind. But what is the remainder? These contaminated aggregates that was projected from an impure cause, right? The karma and afflictions from the last life. When that person then passes away from that life, that was their last life in samsara. And then they no longer have contaminated aggregates because they have no more klesha, they have no more delusions. So they then take a pure kind of mental body, they call it. Yeah. So that is the state of nirvana without remainder. Okay. Now, next one. Although limitless sentient beings have thus been caused to pass completely beyond sorrow, no sentient being whatsoever has been caused to pass completely beyond sorrow. Huh? Okay. So this is something where we have to supply a little bit of commentarial lifting to understand what's really going on. Okay. So here, when we talk about emptiness, we always have to keep in mind this presentation of what they call the two truths. There's a conventional reality and ultimate reality. Okay, went into this a little bit yesterday. The conventional reality is everything we see. How I like to describe it is someone who's totally untrained in philosophy. If you ask them, are there tables, are there chairs, are there rickshaws, are there dosa? They say yes. Okay. Then all of that conventional reality, it is reality, but we are confused as to how those exist. And we went into this a little bit last night, whether it exists objectively in and of itself or subjectively just in the person's own kind of awareness and cognition. Okay. So although the limitless sentient beings have been caused to pass completely beyond sorrow, right? That's talking conventionally. Ultimately, no sentient being whatsoever has been caused to completely pass beyond sorrow. Means no inherently existing sentient being whatsoever has been caused to pass completely beyond sorrow. You get it? So this is going to happen. No. Okay, I'll explain. So we have these two loves of truth. Okay. Just like in the Heart Sutra, right? It doesn't just say no form, no feeling, no sound, no order, right? It says in emptiness, there is no, which means ultimate nature, right? Ultimately, there is no form. Means there's no truly existent form. Okay? What that means, no inherently existent form. Everything that does exist, you see that before? As many as are designated by imputation as sentient beings. Okay? That is how things exist. Things exist by being merely designated by imputation as sentient beings. The cup exists as being merely designated by imputation as a cup. Okay? In what inherent existence, what true existence would imply, would entail, is that the phenomena does not have to depend on any other phenomena whatsoever for its existence. We talked about this a little bit last time. Our appearance of the inherently beautiful flower, right? We know beauty is in the eye of the beholder. What ignorance is projecting is that somehow the beauty of the flower is somehow inherently established on the flower without having been designated by imputation by the mind of the person beholding it. Okay? So that inherently existent flower doesn't exist at all. But although that inherently existent flower doesn't exist, can we then conclude that the flower doesn't exist? No. The flower exists. But an inherently existent flower doesn't exist. An independently existing flower doesn't exist. Okay? And all phenomena are exactly like this. So, although from conventional standpoint, limitless sentient beings have thus been caused to pass completely beyond sorrow, no inherently existent sentient being whatsoever has been caused to completely pass beyond sorrow. Okay? So remember this format because it's going to come again and again and again through the sutra. At the face of it, it seems contradictory, right? He just said, all limitless sentient beings have been liberated, no sentient being has been liberated. Okay? And this is why sometimes in these Prajnaparamita sutras, there's a risk of nihilism, which is why I had to preface for a day and a half, establishing the conventional reality as being true. Okay? Got it? Aban? Sure.
Does not exist, but it exists, but it does not exist. It was a condition of the skill, law, versus the right to be with this into existence. Or does it bring the one for so many things, every early creation of object. Why do we study about it?
Okay. The two questions. Okay. So the first question was, when we say that something doesn't inherently exist, we just mean that it has come into being through many causing conditions, right? So I think yesterday we talked a little bit about um, dependent arising, dependent arising. So when we talk about inherent existence, true existence, existence from the object's own side, independent existence, those are all pointing to the same thing. This, whatever phenomenon exists independently of any other phenomenon. Okay? Then, when they talk about dependent arising, they do talk about three levels of subtlety. So things that arise from causes and conditions are dependent on their causes and conditions. So when we say the flower, let's say this is real flower, it depended on the sprout, which depended on the seed, and the seed depended on the water, the soil, all this. All those things had to come together for then the seed to germinate and later become a flower. When we just perceive the flower, it's like, well, you can check all those causes and everything that have come into being, then don't really appear. And it just seems like it's just there. Flower, right? Check. You got to check this. Now, the second thing is that all phenomena are dependent on their parts. Okay. So with a flower, you have the petals. What is this thing in the middle? The middle. The stem, the leaf, all this, right? The whole depends on parts. Yeah. Now, I've heard this explanation. Although the whole depends on the parts, when you look at the whole, it seems that there is some flowerness that covers the whole of the flower. Yeah. Or maybe if you look at the body, right? You know, my finger is not my body, my hand is not my body, my arm is not my body, my torso is not my body, my legs, but my head, blah, blah, blah. All those are not the body, right? Are they? Huh? The parts of the body. But punch my arm, punch my body, right? But my arm's not my body. Anyway, I'm not meaning to confuse you. Point is, we have a sense of the body pervading all of its parts. But yet we kind of lose sight of this dependence. Yeah? I think so. Check. But then there's even a more subtle view of dependent arising, which is that for any phenomena to come into being, we saw this, right? As many as are designated by imputation as sentient beings. Okay. So the very famous example is when we take the example of three lines like this, right? Three lines like this. One, two, three. Okay. We all have an appearance, I think, of A, right? It appears that's the A. Now, for the A to come into being, well, are those three lines the A? No? Individually, they're not. Oh, what about all three together? No? Yes. If you think in English, in other words, if you've learned the Roman alphabet, then it's an A, but if not, it's not an A.
That's me.
Okay. So this is something, this is the most subtle explanation of dependent arising. Okay. So I don't want to just give you the answer. This is something to think about. Okay. So we had one just say, okay, so when we're learning, we have those three lines on the paper, and then there's no appearance of an A. And then our beloved mother or our teacher or whoever then says A, then we come to learn that's an A. But what is actually happening there? They talk about three things. There's a basis of designation, there's a label, and then there's a mind that attaches the label to the base. Understand? So those three lines is the basis of designation of the A. We have the label A, and then a mind attaches the label to the base. Okay, that's what happened. But that is what it means to be merely labeled by the mind. Okay, if whatever the Romans, however many centuries ago, okay, you have this other one, right? B, right? They could have come together and then said, hey guys, this one, let's call that B, and this one, let's call that A. And then we would all have the immediacy of the appearance. When we saw this, we say B. Yeah, like this. So this is similar to the view put forth by Wittgenstein, who talked about language games. Okay. And you know, in a game, right, like chess, we then come together, and how we learn the game is we learn, okay, this piece can go diagonally, this piece can go up, you know, up and down and horizontal. This piece can go, you know, two spaces in one space, right? And then we learn the rules of the game, right? So similarly, our language community, we all get together and we're playing a big game. You say, okay, guys, uh, this one, you know, the clear liquid, okay? Hey, let's call this water. And then another kind of linguistic community, they'll say pani. Then another linguistic community will say, oh, agua, all this, right? Okay. But although then that is just kind of merely designated by that particular linguistic community, when we then see it, we lose that. Like this. I used to do this or notepad. I'll draw different letters, and then I'll draw some like Tibetan letters. And it was very interesting when you learn then different alphabet, different script, you can kind of get confused, right? There's 30 letters in Tibetan. And then like if you're trying to learn them all at once, you don't have the immediacy of the appearance as I do when I see an A or a B, C, right? Then, oh, which one's this? But at a certain point, then I know, ah, or whatever, yeah? Ah, right? There's immediacy. So although it's merely labeled by the mind, ignorance then projects that it's truly existent from the side of that. And we forget that it's just merely designated. Okay? So this is a long way of answering this question, but the point is, you see, because her second question was, but don't we all know that things are arising from causes and conditions. So why do we have to just study about emptiness so much? Right? So here's the point. Although it's true that anything that arises from causes and conditions is empty of inherent existence, okay? Okay, it's like this. In order to have a kind of a logical deduction, okay, right? The logical form of the syllogism would be take the subject, a sprout, it follows that it lacks inherent existence, okay, because it arises from cause and conditions, or because it's a dependent arising. Okay. Now, both that's a airtight logical argument. Now, in but an argument is only going to have as much persuasive force for the person who you're arguing with, depending on their other kind of background assumptions and knowledge and all this, right? Right. So in general, for that to be an argument for that, a valid argument for that person, the person needs to understand that the sprout arises from cause and conditions. Okay, maybe we know that. But here's the difficult part. We then have to know that everything that arises from cause and conditions is necessarily lacking inherent existence. And I would hypothesize to all of you, we don't understand that. Because we really don't understand what it means to be inherently existent. And therefore, if we don't understand that, we don't understand that whatever is arisen from cause and conditions is necessarily lacking inherent existence. Otherwise, and we would debate this. Otherwise, any farmer who plants seeds would realize emptiness, right? Because you ask them, hey, why are you planting seeds? Oh, yeah, it's because I want to, grow corn. Oh, so you know that corn arises from a seed? You know that corn is a dependent arising? Right? So it's not quite that easy. Although these argumentation is like that, the heavy lifting has to be done by understanding the logical evasion. You understand? And that's why we have to study. So I have another question here, but let's just do a reality check. Okay. Remember reality? So you see this text? It is okay, nice. So it ends on page 23. So the first page is page 5. So let's just do some math. 5 minus 23, 18. We have 18 more pages, and I've done not even a page. Okay? That's the reality check. And yes, you have another question. No, it's okay. I'm joking a little bit. Because you see, I wasn't even intending all the way at 4 sessions to go through every word. You'll see this format again and again. A big body is not a big body, therefore it's called a big body. Right? Right? It'll be like A is not A, therefore it's A, or something like this, right? Yeah. So once we understand this for one, we'll hopefully understand the rest without so much hard work. So for that reason, I'll take your question.
Finding that would it mean that the only thing that has inherent existence is emptiness?
No. So what emptiness means is the lack of inherent existence. So there is nothing that exists inherently. So emptiness also is not inherently existent because emptiness also depends on its basis designation, the label emptiness, and a mind that attaches emptiness to the base. Only the things that arises from causing conditions are a dependent arising in the first sense. But everything depends on its parts. And then everything also depends on the three: basis, label, mind attaching the label to the base. Even emptiness. Yes. Even emptiness. Okay. So let's just do a little bit more and then us. Okay. Why is that? Subhuti, because if a bodhisattva engages in discriminating a sentient being, he is not to be called a bodhisattva. Why is that? Subhuti, if anyone engages in discriminating sentient being or engages in discriminating a living being or discriminating a person, they are not to be called a bodhisattva. Okay, so this is a little bit important. Okay. So first of all, we don't have time. I usually like to draw this out from the audience. But here, when we say discriminating a sentient being, we're not talking about discrimination against women or discrimination against a certain race or like this. Discrimination just is not seen as a negative. It just means kind of identifying. Yeah. So here again, what does it mean? Discriminating a sentient being.
I believe that is something called a sentient being.
Well, not just that it exists, but it exists inherently. Okay. So it exists ultimately. Conventionally, the sentient being does exist. Okay. So here, I saw in the commentary, right? So there are these ways that we reify a fixed identity. Engage in discriminating a sentient being, living being, or a person. Okay. So in the commentary, it talks about these different ones. I'll give you badly pronounced Sanskrit. We have the Atman. Atman would be the idea of a permanent, independent I, independent of the body and mind, right? Right? So the person exists, but this person separate from the body and mind doesn't exist. Yes. But we conceive of it to exist. Okay, we're going to go a couple minutes over. The famous thought experiment that illustrates this is in Dharma Kirti's Pramanavartika, where in that he gives a thought experiment saying, if someone were to come to you and say, we can make a deal, you can trade your body for any body that you want. Any body. Yeah. Or we can trade your mind, and we can trade your mind for any mind that you want. Yeah. Understand? Amazing, right? Yeah, so just think about that. So maybe, yeah, maybe we can open this up a little bit. So how many of you would you trade? Huh? Yeah, just don't do this. Yes. I would trade, right? Yes. Huh? No? Don't you understand? Okay. See, I usually do this at a beginner's course, and very seldom, it's a very low percentage of people who will trade. So I'm not sure they're fully understanding. Okay. At least here with some more experienced students, there's a higher percentage. That's good, I think. If this were possible, which is, again, subject to a little bit of debate, but remember, we are trying to be enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings, right? Every moment that goes by when we're not enlightened means we're not doing our utmost to benefit sentient beings. So if we could just, hey, trade my deluded mind for the mind of Manjushri or Avalokiteshvara or the Buddha, wow. Then all this hard work I'm doing, doing retreat, all this, finished. I'm enlightened, right? So why not do it? That's it. You could trade your mind with anyone's mind. Yes. And forget about that. The body, man, some knee pain, sore back, right? A little bit overweight. I've been eating too much food in Hawaii, and now I'm eating too much dosas here. Come on. Then, nice. They always say the youthful Arya Manjushri, right? 16-year-old body. Wow. Nice. So yeah, and you're seeing the statues, right? Nice, nice physique, not too much body fat. Woo. Give me that one. And then Manjushri's mine. Yes. Okay. You need to change your mind. Good. Okay, I convince you. Now here's the problem. It's actually not really possible, right? But here's the point. Here's the point why Dharmakirti is bringing it up. The fact that we could conceive of it shows, what would that be, right? That would be someone trading the body and mind. That's then somehow the owner of your body and mind. That means independent from your body and mind, right? Like I always like to illustrate, if we were to, trade the cup and the flower, I say, oh, I'll trade this flower for, I don't know, your earrings. I'll trade this cup for your cup. We have a conception of there being an owner and the possessions. The owner, of course, is independent from the possessions, which is why we can trade. Then we say, oh, the cup has a new owner. Then we would say, oh, wow, Namjong has traded his mind and body for Manjushri's mind and body. In what sense is that still Namjong? It would only make sense if there was some independence of Namjong's body and mind that was somehow above and beyond the body and mind. That shows an innate concept, an innate belief in the existence of this Atman, or independent I, that is the owner of your body and mind. But that one doesn't exist. But we believe in it innately. Not some argumentation, not through a power of logical deduction, but just the immediacy of the belief. If we didn't have that, the mind couldn't really conceive of it. It would be just like saying, hey, Sadhana, can you bring me some water? But leave the wetness of the water over there. Just bring me the water, but not the wetness. People would be like, Namjong, you really need to sleep after taking these 15-hour flights, right? It would just be like, what the heck is this guy talking about, right? It would be inconceivable. Or, hey, bring me the fire, but don't bring me the heat of the fire, right? because the heat and the fire are inseparably one essence, right? All right. Now, there is another point, but we'll bring it up next time. But the point in the text is, well, do we have time? Oh, we have some time? Okay, one more paragraph. I'm sorry. No. No, Aban. I'm saying we cannot trade our body and mind and still be ourselves, right? But the fact that we can conceive, hey, whose body would I take? Whose mind would I take? Shows that we think it's just like the cup, just like our possessions. There's an I. If I'm like, okay, I want to trade these, who can I trade it for? What can I get? What kind of cup do I want? Right? Shows we have a concept of a possessor and possessions. So the fact that I can conceive of me trading my body and mind holds, it implies that we conceive of an I that is the owner of the body and mind. Means independent of the body and mind. That would be doing the trade. But that one doesn't exist. But the concept of it exists, even if it doesn't exist, The concept can exist. I can have a concept of, I don't know, me being able to dunk a basketball, slam dunk. I can conceive it, I can dream it, but I can't do it, right? We can conceive of the horns of a rabbit, although that also doesn't exist, right? Yeah. So last one for today. Further Subhuti, a bodhisattva gives a gift without abiding in a thing, gives a gift without abiding in any phenomena whatsoever. A gift should be given, not abiding in visual form. A gift should be given, not abiding in sound, smell, taste, activity, or phenomena either. Subhuti, without abiding in discriminating anything whatsoever as any sign, does a bodhisattva give a gift. Why? Is that Subhuti? Because the heap of merit of a bodhisattva who gives a gift without abiding, Subhuti, it is not easy to take the measure of. Okay. So here, we can already understand a little bit, right? It's dealing with the two levels of truth. So it's saying, gives a gift without abiding in the true existence, the inherent existence of the thing, right? So here, in Kamala Shila's commentary and many other commentaries, it talks about the three spheres, okay? So, for there to be a gift, the gift is a dependent arising, and it depends on at least three factors. The gift, the giver, and the recipient, okay? If those three things aren't coming together, right, then it's just a flower. Before the flower to become a gift, there has to be a recipient and a giver. You understand? So that shows the gift doesn't exist inherently. You understand? So the bodhisattva gives a gift, true, yes, conventionally, but gives a gift without abiding in the inherent existence or a concept of inherent existence whatsoever. And so we have form, sound, smell, taste, tactility, phenomena. Those are the objects of the six consciousnesses. We have the five sense consciousness and mental consciousness. Okay? So Subhuti without abiding and discriminating anything whatsoever as any sign means as being inherently existent, does a bodhisattva give a gift. Why is that? Because the people merit that bodhisattva who gives a gift without abiding is not easy to take the measure of. Means, and then it talks about space. But anyway, point is that merit then becomes limitless because not only is it an act of giving, which is the first paramita, yeah, but combining with the understanding of the lack of inherent existence of the gift, the giver and the recipient, combines the six, well, in this case, the sixth paramita, the perfection of wisdom. Then in Chandrakirti's Madhyamika Avatara talks about how when a bodhisattva practices, can do so with all six perfections kind of in one practice. Okay? So, more confusion or less confusion? I'm going to give you some homework. I want you to read this. And then as you read it, try to then think about what the meanings are and have this lens of the two levels of truth. So oftentimes when it is denying something, it's denying it on an ultimate level, but it is asserting it on a conventional level, right? Remember, the falling into nihilism happens when we deny the conventional existence. Okay? So, maybe, yeah, have a question? Sure.
Let's see. You're defending parts of it so that it doesn't feel so strong. Makes sense.
Yeah.
For any emotional experience.
Yeah. So the question was a very good question, by the way. If we're experiencing anger, how can we then apply this wisdom of emptiness to see that it's not sort of inherently? How can we see all the dependent arising so it can help with the anger as an antidote? Okay. So this one, it is tough. So most of the time when we're in the throes of anger, it probably isn't the best time to do this analysis. It probably just is good then to focus in the body where the anger is manifesting and then try to zip your lips and not punch someone, okay? But later, after it's kind of died down a bit, I always like to give this example. You see, when we're insulted, we can then get angry. But even that, you see, we take those words to be somehow harmful to us, right? Like, you're stupid. Yeah. But merely those words and hearing those words, you're stupid. If I just say it to the sky, you're stupid, right? We don't get offended, hopefully. But you're stupid, right? If you see it kind of coming at you, right? But that is dependent on your mind. You see, the words in and of themselves are not offensive, But Shantideva gives the analogy of holding up a target that then gets struck by an arrow. And that target is also dependent on you, and particularly how big our sense of importance that it is that we conceive ourselves as being smart. Then we'll get offended when someone calls us stupid. Right? You know? I give the example of, some years ago in the Korean parliament, a fight broke out because someone said to another one that their mustache was thin. Right? No. So that is like culturally, it's a big insult, right? And it's tied up in them believing a nice full mustache is masculine and da da da. And so that person, in as much as they had it in their mind that it's important for them to be masculine, got more offensive or more offended by it and then punched the guy, right? But I admit I have a very thin mustache. You know, I actually I can't grow any like full beard, right? That's kind of become in fashion again in some parts, very masculine. That's okay. And you can say, hey, Namjong, your mustache is thin. And that's not a big thing for me, right? So this is all just ways to illustrate how these are dependent arising on many causes and conditions, right? So those are some ways. And even other things, right? I used to have this like if you meet someone and they're late, right? They're disrespecting me, they don't value my time, right? All these stories we tell. When in actuality, who knows? Maybe they got into a car accident and they're in the hospital, right? Maybe they're walking down the sidewalk and they saw someone, collapse due to a heart attack and they're trying to save their life. There can be many factors at play. So try to just broaden one's perspective in that way. So in many cases, that's true. It's our own kind of framework. Like we said, I don't think you came last night, but we talked about being in a hot room, right? And that being really unbearable for someone who looks at their AC and it's broken, but it's very joyful for someone in a sauna, right? So it's all like kind of created by your mind. Now, this isn't then to say that we abandon all kind of ethical values and you can then go around harming people and say, oh, it's just in your mind. It's not like that. What I'm talking about in this context is how we use the wisdom of emptiness to apply an antidote to our anger. Our anger is our problem, right? But we don't use this insight to then justify other people's bad behavior or, throw out kind of standards of ethical conduct, right? Because, here again, conventionally, if you set an appointment with someone, you should be on time. Also true, if someone is late for an appointment with you, you should not get angry, right? So both things are true. Yeah. Okay. So we do have one question online, and so I do want to give equal opportunity for my, my friends who are maybe in other geographies. So if emptiness means there's no separate self and no separate other, why does realizing it make the heart open more, not less? So, no problem, no problem. Good night. Or, yeah, good night for me. Mm. So you see, these two elements of the path, the training in compassion and the training in wisdom, are separate. They're two wings of a bird. And I would say, although you do see some statements that when a bodhisattva realizes emptiness, they increase their compassion more. But just the mere realization of emptiness wouldn't necessarily have the compassion increase. It's a separate training to go through. You understand? For someone who's already trained well in compassion, when they realize emptiness, that will further their compassion because they'll understand how the suffering that all beings experience is completely unnecessary. And they'll see it's completely based on this wrong view. So it's like then, seeing someone in a nightmare, you know, maybe they're screaming in their nightmare, but they're still asleep. And you'd be more motivated just to wake them up and say, hey, wake up. It's just a dream, just a dream. Right? Because you see it as being unnecessary. But if you don't care about that person, or maybe if that person were your enemy, right, then you might even be happy that they're suffering. But, so you understand? So just the mere understanding of emptiness does not necessarily mean more compassion. But for a skilled practitioner who's always training in both, then it can further. But just in the question itself, let me understand. Let me make this clear. Always keep in mind the two levels of reality. Separate self, no separate other, fine. But there is still self and other. Conventional. All right. So thank you very much. We are going to have two more sessions only. So I'm going to be a little bit selective in choosing out some of the key passages that I'll use, them to illustrate. But my thought is, and please do your part so this becomes a true thought. My thought is, if you do understand how this text works, and you understand this kind of format, A is not A, therefore it's called A, then you'll see it. And then any other application in the sutra, you'll understand, and you'll be able to differentiate based on these two levels of truth. So your homework is you read through this, and then you just try, right? And I bet already you'll have 9%, maybe 85%. Okay? Okay, so let's just dedicate the merit that due to the merit of our time here today and listening to this profound teaching on direction of wisdom, may all sentient beings vast in space quickly attain the state of enlightenment, completely free of all sorrow. We also dedicate for the mind of bodhicitta to arise in the hearts of myself and all sentient beings. And may those who have already achieved the mind of enlightenment, may it always increase and never decline. We also dedicate for a long life with spiritual friends, particularly Son Siddhaya Lama, We dedicate for the long lives, yeah, of all the virtuous friends teaching the unmistakable path to enlightenment. We dedicate for the swift return of Ramzo Rinpoche. Dedicate for the fulfillment of all our holy guru's wishes without even a second's delay. We dedicate for Choe Khor Sum Ling and all the other Dharma centers that are promoting and preserving the Dharma to have all their obstacles removed and all the required conditions so they can be successful in their promoting and preserving the Dharma. And then especially for all of the proximate causes of suffering in the world, the wars, the environmental degradation, natural disasters, and so forth, may all these be pacified, as well as all the sufferings of body and mind due to mental and physical illness. May these be pacified and never occur again. Okay. Thank you very much.
Very much. For teaching us.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Keep your neck warm.
Thank you, Venerable. Thank you so much. And everyone, please join us for the continuation of the teachings on 4th and 5th. Next week, the teachings, Buddhism in a nutshell, will be online. And the teachings by Legden will be starting from 5:30 in the evening and not from 5 o'clock. This is for all online people online as well. Next Saturday. And next Sunday, Archanala will be leading the puja here at the center. Please join us here and participate.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh.
Oh. Good. Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, sure.